You know that feeling when you're scrolling through your bank account and you're like, where did all of this go? Like, you made money this month. You remember getting paid. But somehow between the coffee runs and the random purchases and the subscriptions you forgot you had, it just evaporates. And then you close the app and pretend it didn't happen. I see you doing that. I see you telling yourself you'll get serious about money next month, next year, after this project, after you make more. And I'm not saying that to shame you. I'm saying it because I've been there and I know what's really happening underneath. You're not bad with money. You're not irresponsible. What's actually happening is that you're trying to change your entire financial life all at once. You're thinking about retirement accounts and investment strategies and building 6-month emergency funds, and it feels so big and so overwhelming that you just don't start. So you stay stuck. You stay in this loop where you know you should care about your money, but the gap between where you are and where you need to be feels impossible. Here's what nobody tells you. You don't need to overhaul your entire life this month. You need 5 tiny things. 5 small habits that are so small they don't feel like habits at all. They feel like nothing, but they compound. And that's where the real change happens. Hey sis, I'm Maya, your big sis. I'm here to help you build real wealth and live the life you actually love. No legal jargon, no judgment. If you're ready to stop winging it with your money, hit subscribe and let's do this together. Penny and I are so happy you're here. So let's talk about these 5 habits. And I want you to hear me when I say this. None of these are complicated. None of these require you to become a different person. They're just tiny shifts in how you move through your day. But they're the shifts that actually stick. Habit number 1. The 5-second rule before you buy anything. This one is so simple it almost feels like a joke. But here's what I want you to do. Before you buy anything at all, you pause for 5 seconds. Not 5 minutes, 5 seconds. And in those 5 seconds, you ask yourself one question. Do I need this or do I want to feel something right now? Because here's the truth that nobody wants to admit. Most of our spending isn't about the thing. It's about what we think the thing will make us feel. You're tired, so you buy coffee. You're stressed, so you buy that shirt. You're bored, so you scroll and suddenly you've bought 3 things you didn't know you wanted. The 5 seconds is just enough time to catch yourself in that moment, to notice what's actually happening. But here's where it gets deeper. That pause isn't just about stopping yourself. It's about building awareness of your emotional triggers. Because once you start noticing the pattern, you realize something. You realize that when you're scrolling at 11 p.m. and buying things, it's not because you want the thing. It's because you're avoiding something. Maybe you're avoiding the fact that you're lonely. Maybe you're avoiding work you didn't finish. Maybe you're avoiding the conversation you need to have with someone you love. So the 5 seconds becomes this little mirror. It shows you what's really going on underneath. And sometimes you'll buy it anyway, and that's fine. But sometimes you'll realize you don't actually want it. You just wanted a break. You just wanted to feel like you had control over something. And that awareness is everything. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, you start making different choices. I had a friend who started doing this, and she told me something that stuck with me. She said, I realized I was spending money like I was trying to buy my way out of my own life. And that's so real. Because when you're not conscious about your spending, that's exactly what you're doing. You're buying your way out of boredom, out of stress, out of sadness, out of the feeling that your life isn't quite what you want it to be yet. But the thing is, you can't buy your way out of your own life. You can only buy your way into debt. So the 5 seconds is the moment where you get to choose differently. Habit number 2, 1 subscription audit per month. I know you have subscriptions. Streaming services you forgot about. Apps you downloaded once. Memberships you meant to cancel. And they're all just sitting there pulling $5 here, $15 there, and you're not even using them. It's like you're paying for a gym membership you haven't been to in 6 months. Except it's happening across like 10 different services. Here's what you do. 1 day a month, you open your banking app. You scroll through the last 30 days of transactions. You look for anything that says subscription or membership or auto-renew. You write them down, and then you ask yourself, did I use this? Would I buy this again right now? If the answer is no, you cancel it. That's it. 1 audit. Takes maybe 10 minutes. And I'm telling you, most people find between $50 and $100 a month just sitting there bleeding out. But let me tell you why this matters beyond just the money. Because yes, $50 a month is $600 a year. And $600 a year is significant. But the real shift happens when you realize something. You realize that you've been paying for things you don't even remember you have. And that's a sign that you're not actually in control of your money. Your money is kind of just happening to you. You're not choosing where it goes. It's just going. When you do this audit, you're taking back control. You're saying, I get to decide what I pay for, not the algorithm, not the company that made it easy to sign up and hard to cancel, me. And that shift in agency is huge. Because once you realize you can cancel things, you start realizing you can make other choices too. You can say no to things. You can choose what you spend money on. You can be intentional. Here's something else that happens. When you're looking through those transactions, you're going to see patterns. You're going to see that you signed up for that meditation app because you were stressed about work. You're going to see that you got that streaming service because you were bored during lockdown. You're going to see that you bought that app that promised to organize your life because you felt like your life was out of control. And you're going to realize something. You're going to realize that a lot of your spending is actually about trying to solve an emotional problem with a purchase. And that's not a character flaw. That's just being human. But once you see it, you can address the actual problem instead of just throwing money at it. Habit number 3, the 1-day rule. This one is my favorite because it actually works. If you want to buy something that costs more than a certain amount, you wait 1 day. Not forever. 1 day. You add it to your cart, or you take a screenshot, or you write it down and you come back to it tomorrow. Because impulse is powerful, but impulse fades. What you want today, you might not want tomorrow. Or you'll want it just as much, but you'll have had time to think about whether it fits into your actual life, whether you have the money for it without stress, whether it's worth it. And here's the thing. If you still want it tomorrow, you can have it. But that 1 day creates space between the impulse and the action. And that space is where real decisions happen. Now, I want to be real with you about this. The 1-day rule isn't about deprivation. It's not about denying yourself things. It's about making sure that when you do buy something, it's actually something you want, not something you want in the moment because you're feeling something. There's a difference, a big difference. Think about it like this. You know that feeling when you're scrolling social media and you see someone else's life and you feel like your life is lacking? So you buy something because you think it'll make you feel like that person. You buy the expensive coffee. You buy the designer bag. You buy the thing that you think will make you feel like you have it together. But then you get it and you realize that it didn't actually change anything. You still feel the same way. You just have less money and a thing you didn't really need. The 1-day rule stops that cycle. Because by tomorrow, the social media scroll is gone. By tomorrow, the comparison feeling has faded. By tomorrow, you're back to being yourself and you can ask yourself honestly, do I actually want this, or was I just trying to feel something different? Here's what's wild. Studies show that about 60% of impulse purchases are things people regret within a week. 60%. That means if you're buying 5 things impulsively, 3 of them you're going to regret. 3 of them you're going to wish you had that money back for. So the 1-day rule is basically just giving yourself permission to make better decisions. It's not restrictive, it's actually freeing. And here's the bonus. When you do this, you start noticing something else. You start noticing that the things you really want, the things that actually matter to you, you still want them the next day. You still want them the day after that. Those are the things worth buying. Those are the things that actually add value to your life. Everything else is just noise. Habit number 4, track 1 category of spending. You don't need to track everything. That's overwhelming and it doesn't work. But pick 1 category. Maybe it's food. Maybe it's shopping. Maybe it's entertainment. Maybe it's that category where you know you're spending money, but you're not totally sure how much. And for the next month, you track it. You write it down, or you use an app, or you screenshot your receipts. You just see it. You see how much you're actually spending on that one thing. Because here's what happens. Awareness changes behavior, not judgment, not shame, just awareness. When you see that you're spending $200 a month on food delivery, something shifts. You don't have to cut it in half. But you might think about cooking 3 times that week instead of 5. You might meal prep on Sunday. You might realize that some of those orders were just habit, not actual hunger. The number itself becomes your teacher. And here's something really important. When you pick your category, pick the one that makes you a little uncomfortable. Pick the one where you're like, I don't really want to know how much I'm spending on this. Because that's the one that's actually going to teach you something. That's the one where you're probably spending more than you realize. And that's the one where you have the most power to make a change. Let me give you an example. I had a friend who tracked her coffee spending for a month. She thought she was spending maybe $30 a month. Turns out she was spending $120 on coffee. Then she was shocked. But here's what happened. She didn't quit coffee. She didn't become some person who never buys coffee again. But she started making different choices. She started buying a really good coffee maker and making coffee at home most days. And then she would treat herself to the expensive coffee maybe once or twice a week. And she went from $120 to maybe $40. And she felt better about it because she was being intentional. She was choosing when to spend money on coffee instead of just doing it automatically. That's what tracking does. It doesn't shame you. It doesn't make you feel bad. It just gives you information. And with information, you get to make choices. Without information, you're just kind of floating along, wondering where your money went. Habit number 5, the micro investment. This one is about starting, not about becoming rich, just about starting. So you pick an amount. Maybe it's $5. Maybe it's $20. Maybe it's $50. Whatever feels possible for you right now. Then you move it to a separate account, or you buy one share of an index fund, or you put it into a high-yield savings account. You do this once a week or once a month. You don't have to understand everything about investing. You just have to start. Because here's what I know. The biggest barrier to building wealth isn't knowledge. It's action. It's the belief that you have to understand everything before you start. But you don't. You start small. You start with $5. And then something magical happens. You start to see yourself as someone who invests, someone who builds wealth. And that identity shift changes everything. It changes how you make decisions. It changes what you think is possible. Think about it like this. Right now, if someone asked you, are you an investor? You'd probably say no. You'd probably say, I don't have enough money to invest. I don't understand the stock market. I'm not that person. But what if you started putting $5 a week into an index fund? What if you did that for a month? Then you could say, I'm someone who invests. Not I want to be, not I'm trying to be, you're be. But that shift in identity is more powerful than you realize. Because your identity drives your behavior. If you see yourself as someone who wastes money, you'll waste money. If you see yourself as someone who saves money, you'll save money. If you see yourself as someone who builds wealth, you'll start making decisions that build wealth. And the micro investment is the thing that flips that switch. It's the proof. It's the evidence that you're not just thinking about doing this. You're actually doing it. Here's what's beautiful about starting small. You're not risking anything. You're not putting yourself in a position where you could lose money you need. You're just putting in $5. And if the market goes down, you lose maybe $1. But you're building the habit. You're building the identity. You're building the belief that you can do this. And here's the math that nobody talks about. If you invest $5 a week, that's $20 a month. That's $240 a year. And if you do that for 10 years, that's $2,400. But with compound interest and market growth, that $2,400 could turn into $3,000 or $4,000. That's just from $5 a week. Imagine what happens when you get more comfortable and you increase it to $10 a week. Or $20, the compounding becomes real. But more than the money, what happens is this. You start to see yourself differently. You start to see yourself as someone who has a future, someone who's building something, someone who's making choices that matter, and that's worth more than the money, because that's the foundation for everything else. Now, I want you to understand something. These 5 habits aren't about deprivation. They're not about becoming obsessed with money or never having fun again. They're about creating awareness. They're about building a relationship with your money that's actually conscious instead of just reactive. Because right now, for a lot of you, money is something that happens to you. You earn it, it disappears, and you're confused about where it went. These habits flip that script. They make you the person in control. They make you intentional. And that intentionality is what creates change. The beautiful part is that these habits compound. You start with the 5-second rule. Then you add the subscription audit. Then the 1-day rule. And suddenly you're not just spending less. You're thinking differently. You're making different choices. And those choices add up. Over a month, you might find an extra $100. Over a year, that's $1,200. Over 5 years, that's $6,000. And that's just from 5 tiny habits. Imagine what happens when you build on that. But here's the real magic. It's not just the money. It's the person you become. You become someone who thinks about her choices, someone who's intentional, someone who knows that she has power over her own financial future, that a person makes different decisions in every area of her life. That person doesn't just spend money differently. She works differently. She relates differently. She dreams differently because she knows that she's capable of building something. It's no use just listening to me. Your task for this month is pick one. Just one of these 5 habits. Not all of them, one. The one that feels most doable for you right now. And commit to it for the next 30 days. Do it and tell me what happened in the comments so I can celebrate with you. I want to hear which habit you picked and what you discovered about yourself and your money. Before you go, if this felt like the chat you needed today, subscribe so we can keep hanging out. And if you have a friend who needs a financial big sis too, share this with her. Let's help all our girls level up. You got this. Take care of your money, sis.